It is a privilege to stand before you today, for I have been honored by my children who requested that I eulogize their father, Jean Savoy. This is no easy task, for how can one summarize a life into a few minutes? Much less a life of the scope, breadth, and depth as was Jean's life. You will forgive me if I fail at my attempt to be brief. I met Jean in 1967. I was 19, he was 40. I was a young journalist student. He was a seasoned jungle explorer and writer. It was a day in late October when he interviewed me for the position of personal assistant and interpreter, a job that I thought would surely advance my budding career. Little did I know. I remember the day well. It was a beautiful sunny spring afternoon in Peru. Jean opened the door to his 9th floor suite at the El Pacifico building in Miraflores, a suburb of Lima, and greeted me with a warm smile and a friendly handshake. He was wearing tan slacks, a light rust-colored polo, and a sweater loosely draped over his shoulders. It was a bright parrot green. But what I remember most is the glow around him and in his eyes. And that he blushed, red as a ripe tomato, when he said, "You're sort of dumb, aren't you?" After I had answered that I knew not how to type, take shorthand, or dictation. I knew he was joking and told him so. Well, dumb or not, he hired me anyway. Eventually, I became Jean's life partner, companion, and wife. Not only do I know Jean the visionary, the explorer, and the mystic, but most important, I know Jean the man, with all his complexities, foibles, and virtues. During our 25 years together, I have faulted Jean, the husband, man, and leader, for a number of real and perceived flaws. In fact, we divorced 15 years ago for reasons that are not pertinent to this moment. What is important is that he is the only man I have ever loved, and that not once have I wavered in my admiration of him or doubted the greatness of his work and contributions to mankind. If I had to choose again a father for my children, most definitely it would have to be him. Now, Jean was born in Bellingham, Washington, to a beautiful and lively Mame Jeanette Rogers, the granddaughter of a Baptist minister, and to Louis Del Savoy, a dapper but elusive restaurateur businessman. He was a premature baby. A shoebox was his first bed, and the nurse's ring that attended the birth fit around his tiny wrist. Born in 1927, Jean was a child of the Depression. He spent his early years in the Applegate country, that part of southwestern Oregon between the Rogue River and neighboring streams in the Klamath Mountains, with his mother, a new little brother, Bill, and his adoptive father, Walt Daly, a chef who Mamie married when Jean was 5. They lived amongst loggers and miners, proud people who eked out a living by the sweat of their brow and who were too proud to accept handouts from the government. Jean disliked school with all his heart, but loved summer vacation just as much. when his father would take him hunting and fishing. Walt, who on occasion would also pan for gold, taught him patience and how to be a keen observer of nature, skills that would later serve Gene well during his jungle and sea expeditions. Gene grew into adulthood in the 40s and 50s, a milieu in which men were providers and women and their children were taken care of. It was a time when, with wanderlust in their eyes, young men admired military heroes and yearned to be like them. It was so for Gene. Gene's hero was his uncle Leonard, who served in World War II and became a prisoner of war under the Japanese. At age 17, Gene himself joined the United States Navy and served 2 years in the Naval Air Services as a gunner. Shortly after he was discharged, Gene converted to Catholicism and in 1947 enrolled in the University of Portland to pursue his dream of becoming a priest. This plan, however, was short-lived, for Gene was already developing understandings about spiritual growth that were in conflict with the church's doctrine. So, encouraged by Monsignor John Delaney, his psychology professor, Gene embarked on a personal spiritual quest, and for the decades that ensued, he studied the great world religions, mysticism, and Gnosticism, among many other studies. At age 21, he married and soon became a newspaper publisher and editor of a lumberman's trade journal in Portland, Oregon. His interest in Native American life, sparked in his youth by his partly Cherokee ancestry and visits to the reservation with his father, increased as Gene's work took him up and down the Pacific coast from California to Canada. In 1956, when both his newspaper business and marriage failed, he decided to turn his thirst for adventure into reality and traveled to Peru, where he would live on and off for 12 years. Having left Peru short of turning 30 years of age, he missed the decade of the 1960s in the United States, an age of great change, social upheaval, and growth in the nation. So, in many respects, when Gene returned to America in 1972 with me and our 11-month-old son, Gino, he remained a man of the 50s. However, in other, more profound ways, he was a man for all ages and a man of the future.